All right, kids, this is where we left off yesterday, was where John Adams was elected after Washington decided he was going to go back to Mount Vernon. And I gave you the big speech about how people kind of just wanted more Washington, and that's really not what they got. So now let's just look at some of the things that happened during Adams's presidency that were, some of them were Adams's fault and some of them not so much. One of the things that happened was called the XYZ affair. So the United States was in the middle of an argument with France when Adams became president. And France and Britain were at war, and that's almost a continual state of things. And part of this was due to the French Revolution. And after the French Revolution, and we're going to talk about this even more, the French Revolution went on for quite some time. And then after that, a man called Napoleon Bonaparte came to power in France. But this is still down the road some. But you need to know that the French Revolution it wasn't over and done with real quickly, like in America, where it was like 6 years and then we signed a treaty and we moved on. In France, this thing dragged on for a while, and then the king was actually replaced by a dictator. So it didn't get a whole lot better for them. But anyway, Britain is at war with France at this point still, and France used Jay's Treaty as an attempt to try to help Britain with the war. And so Britain had started seizing U.S. ships, and then also France started seizing U.S. ships. So now we were getting it from both sides. You know, I have pictures down here at the bottom of an angry French person and the current Queen of England in a grumpy mood, trying to show you that both sides were mad at us. We couldn't make anybody happy at this point, which Washington had said so much. He's like, don't make friends with people because you're going to get in trouble. But the problem was we couldn't hardly help it because we were such heavy trading partners with England, and we owed France so much for our independence. So Adams sent a team of diplomats to France to try to get things figured out. And so this is something that he was trying to look at. What did Washington do when Washington had this problem? Well, Washington sent people to talk things out with folks. And so Adams is trying to do the same thing. But the French officials refused to meet with the American team, and they were forced to just kind of wait around. And now this is very embarrassing. It's very rude on a diplomatic scale to force people to just wait around on you when you come there to talk with them from a foreign country. You just don't have people just wait around on you. That's a high sign of rudeness. And instead, the French government sent these 3 unnamed people, and we still don't know their names. I'm sure some historian somewhere has dug into this and has a supposition of who these people are. And if Mrs. Butts had cared very much about it, I probably would have, gotten my nose into the books and probably tried to bring you more information. But the thing is, at the time, and even further forward into history for the longest time, and to this very day, the names are not well known of these people who contacted the American team. These 3 people contacted the Americans, and they demanded a bribe in order to get the raiding stopped on U.S. ships. So in other words, it was blackmail, pure and simple. It was like, well, we can see that the raiding gets stopped on the U.S. ships, but we want X amount of dollars. Well, first off, the U.S. officials had gone there to meet with the French government. These people were not the French government. They were like secret undercover guys sent by the French government. The U.S. officials probably are not even 100% sure that they are speaking with someone who talks for the French government. So this is not good at all. And the U.S. officials were very upset with this, and it's not good. The American representatives refused to pay the bribe. They're highly insulted, and they pretty much pack their stuff and leave and go home and say, no, we're not paying a bribe. And when Adams heard what happened, he was furious as well. And he urges Congress to prepare for war, plain and simple. And in fact, to use money to start building a strong Navy. John Adams is considered the father of the American Navy, the United States Navy, because he is the one who started a real sincere effort to build warships for the United States. And Congress hears about this, and they're furious about it also, that the people that we sent there to talk with the French government were asked for a bribe. It's so demeaning and so degrading, and they're furious about it. Now, none of this is Adams's fault. He didn't pay the bribe. He didn't send the people there to talk about a bribe. It was never his intention to have anything to do with a bribe. But because he was president during this period of time, just like any other president who gets stuck in a bad place, he gets blamed for the whole thing. Again, I want you to understand, he was not himself part of dealing with this, but again, he was president during the time, so he gets stuck with the blame for it. And that happens to presidents all the time. All right, now these things he is to blame for, the Alien and Sedition Acts, or these things this part he's to blame for. Because of the XYZ affair, people became, I mean, this got out into the United States. I mean, once it got out to Congress, it's published in newspapers, and again, people in the United States can read. I know Mr. K, he told you that people mostly were illiterate, but that's really not true, guys. A lot of people could read in the United States, and if you couldn't read yourself, you found someone who could read to you, and you learned the news of the day. So people became suspicious of foreigners because of the XYZ affair. Because a lot of Europeans were coming to our country at that time. They were immigrating here because land was cheap and land was good. Farmland was good and it was cheap. And a lot of the Europeans who came to America supported the French Revolution because, well, it was freedom from tyranny. That's what they thought it stood for. And let's not forget about the heads being chopped off. So there was that aspect of it. But because of the whole of the heads being chopped off part, and now the XYZ affair, native-born Americans start to look upon the French Revolution very differently, and they're worried about it. And they're worried that if we have to go to war with France, because they're continually still raiding on our ships, not just the British now, but the French too, the French are raiding on our ships, we're afraid if we have to go to war with France, these new people, the foreigners, the, quote, aliens, are not going to support us in a war, and they're worried about that now. So the Federalists, let's remember who they are, that's Hamilton and his crew, and Adams, because he was elected by the Federalists. The Federalists in Congress passed the Alien and Sedition Acts because they're afraid. They're afraid, like I just told you, the new Europeans are not going to support the war, if there is one. There isn't one, but if there's going to be one, they're afraid they won't support it. And they allow the president to imprison these people, the new immigrants, or deport them without much due process at all. Of course, this is patently unconstitutional, and a lot of people look at this. Jefferson and his people, now remember Jefferson is Adams' vice president, but a lot of people, Madison, who wrote the Constitution, he's looking at this and saying, how are you doing this? Why would you do this? You can't just throw people in jail. Please put this in the back of your little computer brains. He won't be the last person and the last president to act this way. All right. So Democratic Republicans, that would be Jefferson and his crew, and remember Jefferson is Adams' vice president, saw these Alien Sedition Acts as tyranny. And you can see that they kind of were. I mean, you can't just throw people in jail without due process. And they hope the states are going to step up to protect the people's liberties. Please look at these last two bullet points. It's pretty important. Jefferson wrote something called the Kentucky Resolution that was passed by the Kentucky legislature. Madison wrote something that was called the Virginia Resolution that passed in the Virginia legislature. Notice that Kentucky and Virginia didn't write these things. Jefferson and Madison wrote it for them. All right, and we're going to get this is very important. It becomes important even down to the Civil War. So please pay attention. Okay. It's all in red. It's in red because it's important. Okay, the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions stated that states are allowed to nullify federal laws that they thought were unconstitutional. The resolutions established and supported the principle of states' rights. States' rights holds that the powers of the federal government were limited to those clearly granted by the Constitution. The states should have all other powers. Now, the red bullet points are important because what it means is this. Any state could look at laws, not the Constitution amendments and that kind of thing, not the Bill of Rights and that kind of thing, but the laws passed by Congress in Washington, D.C. Any state could look at any law passed by Congress and say in their own state legislature, we think this is unconstitutional, so we're just not going to follow it. And that would be the end of it. Now, that is really probably not any way to run a country. It sounds like it would be good that states should be able to do that, but when it comes to actually running a country, it would make it fall apart over time. And honestly, guys, People are still having this debate now in 2016. Are the states allowed to make decisions on things? It's still a problem in 2016. So that's why it's so important that you wrap your minds around it. All right. So during all this time, the Federalists are urging Adams to go to war with France, but Adams is not a stupid person. He knows that this isn't a good idea. We really don't have a navy built yet. We don't have much of an army. We've only just barely begun to start taxing people, so we don't have much money. And so he continues to try to seek peace, and he sends a representative one more time to try. And in 1800, the French agree to stop attacking American ships. But people didn't like France, and they support Hamilton and his supporters, and they oppose and Hamilton and Adams and the Federalists. People start to not like them because of this whole thing. And so what this is going to set up is an election where, oh, guess what? These guys are going to be thrown out, and we're going to try somebody new. Well, you know what? It kind of sounds like something that just happened recently in our country.